Hello, everyone, and welcome to another VantagePoint YouTube live session. So glad everybody could join us today. We're going to be covering a sometimes scary topic of earnings today. So before we get started, I do want to just make sure you guys can hear me loud and clear. Just let me know down in the chat. That'll also help you find the chat for this session because I am going to rely a lot on your communication during our training today. Keep in mind that anytime we dive into VantagePoint or the software or any sort of education, it is for that purpose. It is for education. I am not a licensed advisor, but I am certainly going to help you better understand the topics that we go over in these sessions. So I hope everybody really gains much knowledge today, at least a small nugget or two that you guys can take away to really help you have more confidence and less fear when it comes to trading around earnings and help you to develop more of a strategy instead of a scare tactic. So I'm gonna go ahead and dive on into VantagePoint, but while I get that set up, let me know in the chat if you can. I know we did a sound check, so thank you for everyone who did that for me. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Vic. Thanks, Gail. Much appreciated. But what I want you to do now is let me know, how experienced are you with trading around earnings? Do you know nothing about it? Let's go on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is being like, I'm an expert, I trade earnings all the time, and maybe 1 being, I'm not so sure about it, I try to avoid it. So let me know in the chat while I get the VantagePoint software pulled up, and we'll go ahead and dive right on in. Perfect. Thanks, Jeffrey. Glad to have you here today. All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and jump on in. Looks like we've got people from all over today. So glad. Wayne, thank you. I appreciate that honesty, Wayne. Sometimes that's how it feels, right? But hopefully today we'll change that. We'll give you some education on earnings and how to really just plan and prepare your trade strategy so that way you can trade with confidence, whether it's earnings season or not. All right, so we are kind of smack dab in the middle of earnings season right now. And so I thought today would be a great time to review how to prepare your trade strategy around earnings. Because really, earnings is in just about every single market, right? So if we take a look before we jump into earnings, which we are going to get through, we're going to be together here for the next hour or so. I'm going to ask for some ticker symbols at the end as well so we can do some live analysis together. But let's go ahead and take a look just at the VantagePoint software and go over the basics really quickly. So tell me, who in our session today is already using VantagePoint, or are you new to VantagePoint? Maybe it's the first time you've seen it. Let me know if you are in the chat. That way we can make sure that we get everybody on the same page before we jump into the topic of earnings. Okay, so let's go ahead and just review those basics for anybody. Wayne, you're cracking me up today. Well, again, hopefully we're going to change that today, right? So let's thanks, Rob. All right, perfect. So glad to have some new folks joining us here today. If you're not familiar with VantagePoint, welcome to the most powerful software when it comes to financial forecasting. We do use artificial intelligence. So whenever I'm referring to predictive forecast, understand that VantagePoint is forecasting 1, 2, and 3 days in advance. And yes, it's incredibly powerful with up to 87.4% accuracy. So just to get that accuracy question out of the way for everybody, is it accurate? The answer would be yes, and we have plenty of white paper studies to prove it. But I'll show you that as we go through our session today. So let's just talk about how to use the VantagePoint software. So I've just got a chart pulled up, APTV. It's got some earnings coming up. In fact, today, so I thought that would be a good stock to look at with everyone. Now, there are 4 key points you want to understand about the VantagePoint software. We're going to be looking for 4 primary points of confirmation, all right? So 1, that's going to be our crossover. You can see we can have a crossover to the upside or to the downside. Let me just get my pen here so I can point that out for everyone. So if you come over to our screen, we've got a crossover to the upside right here where our blue line crosses above the black line. All right, that's going to shade that trend in green and give us good bullish confirmation from a trend standpoint. Now, this is looking out. This is 2 days of predictive data that we have on our screen right now. So as you can see, if that blue line stays above the black line, right, then we would really have confidence to continue in that trend and be able to manage that position from there. Now, before you enter, though, you would certainly want to make sure that you are also looking at the other 3 pieces of confirmation. So the other piece here, and maybe you can see it or maybe I am in the way, so I'll show you another example as well, but we'd also be looking for this red and green bar down here at the bottom. This would be our neural index. That neural index is looking at price also 2 days ahead. So it's really telling you as the trader, does VantagePoint, does the artificial intelligence expect this market's price action to move up or down over the next 2 days, which is great for confirming a trend in the relative direction. So we would look then down at that crossover. Do we have confirmation on that, what we would call the neural index or price action? And then, of course, the third component would be the predictive differences. And again, if you can't see that, that's these lines that you see down here at the bottom. That's going to give us measures of strength in the trend. Well, if you're looking for a bullish move, you probably want strength continuing bullishly. So we would look for that bullish strength. Now, I can, in fact, just pull this this chart up slightly, so maybe you guys can see that a little bit better there. And if you'll notice, we've got all 3 of those predictive differences coming up while the neural index is green and our trend is confirming bullish. Those are our 3 first points of confirmation. Now, I did say the magic number was 4, didn't I? So the 4th point is actually going to come from our predictive trading candle. And yes, that's right, I said predictive trade candle. So if you notice right here, we have this gray shaded candle. This gray shaded candle is actually the predicted high and predicted low for the next trade day. Now, keep in mind, this software is predictive, so these forecasts that you're seeing now, VantagePoint family members had last night, so they could proactively plan their trades for the next day. All right, so if you want the information a day ahead of time for the next 2-day predictions or even 3-day predictions, VantagePoint is the way to do that. So as we see, I said I would give you some other examples, right? So let's take a look at that example to the downside. We've already seen where we had potential for a nice bullish trend here, but how do you know when to exit? That's a big issue that a lot of traders have. So, well, you would just look at the inverse of what we looked for on the bullish side. Now we'd look for the downside for a possible exit or even a selling opportunity as well. So it just depends on if you like to short the market. Do we have anyone who likes to short the market here in the session today? Let me know down in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it. So I see we have a couple of VantagePoint family members as well, and those maybe who have not seen VantagePoint yet. So either way, welcome to the session. We're going to provide some great education here today. So if you take a look at the signal to bearish trend, we can look for that blue line to cross below the black line. And again, who doesn't love a good color coding system? Red for bearish here. So the downtrend starts or is expected when that blue line crosses below the black. We can again confirm with that neural index, and we can see that that neural index is red. So red on red, bearish, right? Strength going to the downside. We can see those predictive differences or measures of strength also confirming that bearish movement. And let me just pull this up so you guys can see that a little bit more clearly. There we go. All right. So again, confirmation here to the downside. And then how do you know when to enter back in to a potential bullish trend? Well, the expectation would then be here when our blue line crosses back over the black line. That was a tongue twister. And then of course we get a bullish expectation on the neural index, and then those predictive differences all coming up as well. So you can see, very simple, very easy to utilize. And of course, then you would always incorporate that predictive trade candle as well. So you can even use your crosshairs. And as we start to jump into additional charts today, keep these 4 points of confirmation in mind. Really, it's, just check it on down the list. And if it looks like you've got confirmation, well, then you can make a confident trade decision. All right, so we can also, let's dive into a little bit of earnings now. So thank you for everybody who shared with me kind of your comfort level on earnings. That is very helpful for me throughout this session. So it looks like we only had a few that were kind of okay with earnings, right? I don't have anybody that put in a 5. Some people put in negative. And hey, I appreciate a good sense of humor. Trading is hard. Let's not make it, miserable. Let's have some fun while we're learning about it too. So earnings, why do earnings matter? Can anyone tell me in the chat, kind of what are your feelings on earnings? Do you prefer to trade on earnings, or do you stay away? So either I trade earnings or I stay away. Let me know in the chat. And as I see the responses coming in, we'll dive into some things that can help you kind of take the fear out of trading earnings. All right. But earnings announcements, right, are really a fundamental type of analysis. But it really matters to you as a swing trader primarily because it can cause some rapid swings in the price action to either take advantage of or maybe stay away from. But either way, you want to make sure that you're on the right side of that because they are typically very volatile time for that particular asset. And so when we have an earnings announcement, this is really just a reporting of that stock's kind of financial health over the last quarter. All right, so typically we'll see those reports come out within the next month after the end of the quarter, which is why we're just starting to see some of those coming out now for the end of Q3. All right, so as we start to see these companies announce how well they've been doing their financial health over the last quarter, that can have a large impact on the stock price. And so one, you need to know when earnings is coming up. So everyone take a look down here. Now I have what's called the earnings flag. You can get this data from some other sources as well, but I want to make sure everybody knows whether you're using VantagePoint or you're using a different platform. This is meant to be educational. So one, please make sure you understand when the earnings are expected to be announced. All right, that is vital because if you don't know earnings is going to be announced and you enter into a position and then all of a sudden that asset just drops, you don't know what you didn't know. So if you now know, you should be looking to find out when that announcement is expected. Then we have no more excuses, right? So if you take a look, you can see that earnings flag. We do have that here in VantagePoint. Now, of course, some of the things that I show you in the session might be optional indicators, but of course, always going to, again, provide that just education here in our sessions today. So if you take a look at that earnings flag, that's going to tell you when the earnings is expected to be reported. So we were expecting earnings today on APTV, and the earnings was expected to be reported on October 30th, 2025. You can see that date right there. Now, if you click on this earnings flag, you can also see that we have additional data here within the software. So a couple of key components that are also going to be very, very important for you to have as a trader so you can make an informed decision. Well, one, what is the estimate? What is the PE ratio that we are expecting? Is it positive or negative? And you can see that the PE ratio or the estimate here is 1.81. That's price to earnings in case anybody needs to know. That's what PE ratio stands for, is the price to earnings ratio. All right. And that is, again, a number that reflects really the financial health of the company. And so if you take, and I know I'm kind of paraphrasing here, not getting into too much of a deep dive on earnings, because I really want you guys to know more so how to trade around it. All right. So we won't get stuck in the weeds here on earnings itself, but how to utilize the right information to strategize around earnings. All right. So Yes, well, we do have that earnings flag for you, Gina. Perfect. So if you see that earnings estimate is 1.81, that is a positive earnings estimate. The date here, of course, before the open, that's BTO. That is an abbreviation that stands for before the open. That means what time of day is earnings expected to be announced? Is it going to be before the open or after the open? Before the open or after market close. All right. That's important because you want to know what day earnings is expected to really impact that prices action or price action. And so if you click on that little dot, of course, you can in fact see it's before the open, after market close, or during market trading. All right. It's going to tell you the period that quarter ended September 2025, and then even the accuracy rating as well, as far as VantagePoint's forecast. How accurate was VantagePoint at forecasting that earnings call? Basically, what did price do after earnings, and did we get it right? All right, and that 87%, that's it's pretty accurate, right? If you could be 87% accurate, it's not 100%, nothing is in the markets, but certainly gives you an edge, right? Even with an edge, you can still have some losses, which is why you need to understand there is increased risk associated trading with earnings. But what you would do, it's very simple to utilize the information in VantagePoint to trade around earnings. So if you do want to trade earnings, what you would do is look down at that neural index. And again, keep in mind, you had this information last night, right? So if you knew that the price action was expected to be bearish for today when we have earnings, then you can confidently either stay in that trade, short the market, or get out, right? Because we had a bullish trend, but because of earnings, we're expecting some bearish sentiment here because of earnings. All right. Now, keep in mind that neural index that you see down there is coming from a vast amount of data. I'm just going to open up the back end so you guys can see. If we go to the market details here, you'll actually be able to see the market analysis, the intermarket analysis that's going on behind the scenes. So if you take a look, what is actually driving, what are the forces and the impacts and the influences that are driving the price of Aptiv? All right, this is APTV. And so we can see that we've even got General Mills, we've got Ring Central, we've got a lot of different assets and a lot of different classes. In fact, even ETFs, US stocks, Forex as well. Keep in mind, all of this data that you're seeing behind the scenes right now is something that is already being taken into account and is actually how VantagePoint is forecasting that expected bullish or bearish price movement, as well as your predictive moving averages and your predictive differences along with that predictive trade candle. So those 4 points of confirmation all have that predictive data coming from the artificial intelligence that's analyzing the top 31 markets that are impacting that particular market that you are looking at. So a lot of data going on behind the scenes, but guess what? You don't have to do that. VantagePoint's going to do it for you and going to do it very quickly. So let's take a look. We can see APTV was expecting a bearish price action today, and I do believe that APTV was slightly down today based on the earnings call. So what does that tell you about the accuracy of that earnings forecast? Well, we already knew that it was 87% accurate here with the AI index. So let's take a look at a couple of others as well. You guys, let's take a look at Apple, right? This is we've had a lot of tech and AI releasing their earnings here recently. And so I thought we would pull up a couple of those. Those are always kind of some hot ticker symbols, but I will take some ticker symbols that maybe you guys have know that earnings are coming up. If you guys want to type in a few, I'll take like the first 3. So go ahead and throw them in the chat. I will take some additional ticker symbols a little bit later, but go ahead and type those in the chat now, and we'll take a look at their earnings expectation. So we could take a look at Apple to start. We can see that, in fact, our earnings were expected to be released on October 30th. Well, last night, if you have the VantagePoint software, you could have looked at that bullish neural index down here at the bottom. And I say bullish because, well, quite simply, it's green. Okay, so we were expecting bullish price action, green for up, red for down, right? So with a green neural index down at the bottom, we have confirmation that we would expect earnings to potentially push price higher on Apple for that day. Now we're already in a bullish trend. You can see we had our 4 points of confirmation back here, right? I think everybody can see that. We've got our neural index. Apparently I'm drawing too fast for my pen, so I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. We had our crossover to the upside. Check that. We had our bullish neural index, and then of course we had our predictive differences all trending up as well. And I do believe we also had a bullish predictive trade candle on that day. There are ways to go back, but just for the sake of time, because I want to get to your ticker symbol request, you guys can just trust me there. But you can see already in that bullish expectation. So if you maybe took a trade on Apple slightly earlier, not just solely based on earnings, but based on the potential implied volatility that tends to rush into an asset prior to earnings. So there is something called an implied volatility rush or crush, if you will, prior to earnings. And that is increasing volatility the closer we get to earnings. Quite simply because earnings can be a big move for a company, all right? So there's going to be, a lot of interest in that asset prior to earnings, similar to Apple as well. Bobby, you would just have to, I don't know if you have a specific question about that, but certainly let me know. CRISPR, I got it. MP, I got it. Thank you so much, guys. Just looking at that now, so much appreciated. All right, so if we see that we had a potential bullish trend starting way back here and then upcoming earnings. Now, if you were in that trend, you may have been a little frightened or a little scared because earnings is coming up. There might have been some of that emotional component starting to kind of inch its way into your trade assessment or your chart assessment. And so VantagePoint can very easily help to dull some of those emotional triggers that can happen in trading, right? And so how? Well, one, we have a bullish expectation. We've got a bullish trend continuing. We also then again look down at that neural index to say, okay, well, we are still expecting bullish price action after the release of earnings. And so then we can also, take a look to see we are still kind of in a bullish state from our strength standpoint as well. And so with that being said, when this software updates again today, we would look down at that neural index to confirm that that is still bullish as well, because of course, Apple will release after market close if they haven't already, and then the impact will be felt tomorrow. So that's a great way to anticipate and proactively plan your trade approach, whether you're staying in through a current trend, whether you are taking advantage of the upcoming earnings, or whether you're exiting because you know earnings is coming and you know that you don't have the stomach for it, right? We'll put it that way, because sometimes that happens, and that's okay. Knowing yourself as a trader is key, because otherwise your emotions get high and you make irrational decisions. That's what happens when emotions run high. So keeping those emotions at bay can really help. But let's take a look at a couple of others. I've got some others pulled up, but you guys had some requests, so let's take a look. I'm going to pull up MP for you. I'm assuming it's MP Materials, right? Not the peso. Keep in mind, guys, we forecast for a lot of different assets, so it could have been the peso. But we do forecast for Forex pairs, ETFs, cryptocurrencies as well. So you could actually come take a look at the full gamut of markets that we do forecast for also. All right. So taking a look at MP Materials, we have earnings coming up on November 6th. All right, so the estimate is negative currently. Estimate expected at negative 0.17. Earnings release date is November 6th. This is going to be after market close, so we'd be looking for that impact on November 7th. All right, and then of course earnings accuracy at 73%. So at that point, day prior, we would be looking at the neural index to, of course, help guide us through that earnings as well. Now, this is a perfect example, though, of that earnings crush. We saw on Apple the earnings rush that came in, and we had a nice bullish move prior to earnings. But what happens when things are expected to be not so great? We saw that this, in fact, earnings estimate was negative. And so this is where we do start to see some selling off of that asset as well. Now, let's take a look at a slightly different time frame too, because I want everybody to understand there are multiple time frames that you can utilize in VantagePoint, depending upon whether or not you like to trade shorter term, you like quicker, faster moves, whether you like to hold on to something a little bit longer. There are plenty of ways to customize that for your individual trade strategy. And so when we do that, we would just click to our separate view. We can go to that short-term crossover, and you can in fact see this can be a great signal to help you manage a higher risk situation. Especially, I don't know if any of you do any analysis with support and resistance. We do have some indicators to help with that, but just in case you don't, you can see we're sitting at a high at resistance there. And so we failed to break through that level, which tells us there's a lot of downward pressure on price here. And with that downward pressure, we are at a higher risk for reversing into a downtrend. So you could switch to a shorter term indication to really protect yourself from some major losses as well. And again, we'd still be using this particular crossover the same exact way. We'd still be looking for those 4 primary points of confirmation. So you've got a crossover, that's check 1, right? We've got our neural index, that's 2. We've got our predictive differences all trending down, that's 3. And then of course we'd look for that predictive trading candle as well. So looking at this as a potential short opportunity coming into earnings if you do short the market. There's some great selling opportunity there as well. All right. Yes, and Michael, and that's the thing. Coming into earnings, you can have that implied volatility crush that happens, but it also could be retracement to a pretty significant buy point as well. And if that's the case and support holds strong, which we can see we are, in fact, you know what? I'll just do this for us really quickly. I'm actually going to turn on our verified resistance and support so you guys can very easily see what I'm referencing. Is anyone using support or resistance to trade? Again, whether it's in VantagePoint or in a different platform, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what these levels indicate. VantagePoint makes it easy. We put arrows so you can see kind of the direction of impact that support or resistance has. And this is really going to impact price as well. So you can see that at this key level, we've hit this support level quite a few times in the past, fairly recently, right through here. And so with support holding strong at this point, if it can hold strong, right, and we get some renewed bullish momentum, Michael, then that is certainly a trade setup that you could look for as well. You may want to also look for that crossover to the upside for bullish potential also to help navigate through that scenario. Perfect. All right. Well, good. Glad it's helping already, right? But there you go. You have it, support and resistance. Now I said support pushes up on price. You can see that arrow right here. All right. But resistance pushes down. I mentioned that earlier, and that's those red arrows there. Again, I said red for down, green for up, right? Again, got to keep with the color coding system. All right. So taking a look at some additional assets here. Let's see. Someone had asked, I'm just coming back. I'm so sorry. I lost my ticker symbols in the chat. Oh, there it is. All right, CRISPR, there we go. So let's just open that up. TRISP. There we go. I can usually spell ticker symbols better than I can company names at this point. So thank you for those. Of course. Yep. That's great, Michael. I'm glad that that's helping you to navigate through that scenario. That's why we do what we do. It's very, very accurate. So I'd look for that, renewed bullish momentum as well at that point to help with confirmation too. So as we can see, CRISPR, let me just grab my pen here. Again, it's easier if I can just kind of draw this on the screen. We did have a crossover to the downside here. Again, looking a little earlier, if you like to lock in profits a little sooner, you could also switch to a short-term crossover as well with confirmation. So short-term cross right here. Again, look on down our line. We do see that we have our crossover check to the downside, neural index to the downside, predictive differences to the downside, and of course we'd confirm with that predictive trade candle. So check, 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 check. I think I got 4 there, right? So we want to always look for that confirmation there. Now, again, if you're entering into that position or just exiting to take profits on the bullish move, either way, you've got a nice move, whichever direction or time frame you choose to utilize. So currently in a downtrend, VantagePoint's medium-term crossover never actually crossed over out of that downward trend. We had a little bit of volatility and consolidation coming into that. But then coming up with earnings, we've got that happening on November 4th. So let's just take a look at that earnings flag, shall we? So we've got a negative estimate coming in at negative 1.32. Earnings date is November 4th. We don't have a time of day, so typically that'll be during market hours, by the way. And of course, the earnings index is 84%. So again, these accuracies, VantagePoint is going to look back at the last 4 quarters to assess whether or not we got earnings right or got earnings wrong. It's going to give you that average here, and that's what our earnings AI index is. So again, if you want to know the accuracy of the neural index during earnings, that's where the AI index really that's the whole purpose of it, right? To give you that accuracy so you can trade with confidence. Something that maybe is at like a 40 here, you may want to stay away from, right? Or 50, right? That's kind of like flipping a coin, but something that's at like 84%, even 90, 99%, then you can have a lot more confidence there to proactively plan a trade strategy around the earnings or avoid it. Either way, you're making a trade decision because sometimes the trade that you didn't take is the best one, right? So let's take a look at this sort of earnings, again, crush that we've seen coming in. Now, keep in mind, I keep referring to this earnings rush and earnings crush, and that's because earnings really is going to start impacting a market before it's ever announced. So there are some key time frames you need to understand. So if you're taking notes, you certainly want to look 21 days out, and then you'll also want to look at least 7 days out to earnings, all right? So 21 days is where we can start to see that that rush and crush start to happen, right? If we were to count these candles backwards, we'd be very close to that right around here where we reached a high, all right? So you can see this impact of earnings is already kind of flowing in, and then 7 days prior to earnings is really where you're gonna want to make a decision. All right. You gotta decide, are you staying for earnings? Are you going? And then of course that day before with the neural index can help confirm that decision for you. So you know whether or not you need to, take profits and run, get out and avoid losses. A lot of helpful, confident trade decisions to be made there. All right. How can you tell if the crossover will not go bearish? Are we referencing Vic like right here, maybe, where we start to see it converge on each other, but it doesn't actually cross over? Can you let me know if that's what you meant in the chat? I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question because that's really important. And actually, I'll show you, you know what, that's a really good example. I'll show you here, but I've got another example of that as well. So this is the whole piece of position management, right? How do you know when to stay and when to go? Perfect. I'm glad. I figured that's what you were talking about, but always better to ask than to assume, right? So if we take a look at our crossover at this point, it's still bullish, right? The blue line never actually crosses below the black. But how do we know it's not likely to cross? Well, here's where I say there's renewed bullish strength here as well. So you can see before we get to that point where we get even close to the crossover, so back during this time frame, you can start to see the short-term crossover rounding out. So it's no longer going down very steep. It's actually starting to trend sideways and then kicks back up right as we get to this point. So let me clear some of this off the screen because you probably can't see that behind all of my drawings. So I will just show you right here. As we start to get closer, you can see that short term starting to regain strength. Now, let me show you a really cool trick. All right. Not my trick, VantagePoint's trick. All right. I've learned all my tricks from VantagePoint. So I'm going to switch over to what we call the triple cross. Now, those of you who are familiar with VantagePoint, you know what the triple cross is. And if you don't, well, then here's your education for today. The triple cross is 3 different predictive moving averages. Yes, 3 different predictive moving averages on the screen at the same time, and it's evaluating the relationship between those predictive differences. So what that means for you is when that triple cross remains strong, it tells you that that trend has a higher integrity, meaning that bullish trend is likely to continue. And if you notice, Vic, right here through here, does that ever turn yellow? Is it ever giving you an area of caution, or is it remaining green? We see here, obviously, I know that was a rhetorical question, but you can see it stays green. So that's what's going to give you the confidence to really navigate through that situation with much more ease there. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful. And then also too, this T cross long, right? You can see this darker blue line is actually an 18-day predictive exponential moving average. That was a very fancy term, right? But for those traders, know that this is a potential reversion level as well. So if you're looking for pullbacks for a potential retracement or buy point, you can use that T cross long level as well. So when price reverts back to that level and we see renewed bullish strength, this is in fact that sort of buy the dip scenario. We're actually going to cover more about that next week. So really excited to jump into the details on that and show you how to navigate through the kind of buy the dip and how to identify those types of opportunities as well. But speaking of identifying opportunities, we can actually scan for earnings. So if you like to trade earnings, or maybe you like to avoid earnings, you can use our IntelliScan. I'm just going to pin that scan to our main page here, because this scan actually sorts and sifts through all of the different assets that we have here in VantagePoint. So you can see we're actually filtering for over 1,800 different assets. But what I've actually told our IntelliScan here by just plugging in some filters is to look for assets that have earnings coming up. All right, so we're using that same earnings flag that's down here, but we're just plugging it into the IntelliScan and making the software do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. All right, so if we take, yes, it did stay green. Yes, it did. I'm sorry, I just saw that. So yes, very good. All right, light bulb moment for a lot of us. So if we see earnings coming up, we can look in the scan for the number of days. Now, I've set this to a custom value to look for upcoming earnings that are expected to happen within the next 10 days. All right. So if you look, you can see, I'll just hover over that area so you guys can see. I'm looking for earnings that are expected within the next 10 days. Something that's happening 30 days out, 60 days out, not necessarily an issue right now. Earnings is not something we might need to take into account. But again, as we start to approach that 21-day mark, that 10-day mark, that's where some really important trade decisions have to be made. And you've got to take earnings into account. So why would you not look for opportunities that either are going to provide that earnings opportunity or know whether or not you should stay away very quickly rather than doing a lot of work and then realizing, oh, I don't want to trade it because of earnings. All right. So saving you some time, creating some efficiency, and also just presenting some really great potential opportunities. So again, looking at days before the earnings announcement, which means within the next 10 days. You could also look at the earnings estimate. All right, you could look at the surprise percentage, which basically just means how wrong were the analysts. All right, so something that has a higher surprise percentage, you would want to maybe be a little bit more cautious of. But also to look at your earnings AI index. So we can actually stack rank these for the best accuracy rating based on that neural index and how VantagePoint has forecasted those earnings plays. So I'm just going to hit that earnings index and put all of the most accurate ones up top. So 99.67% accurate on forecasting earnings. That's Sterling Construction, Constellation Energy. You can see that's actually going to give you that accuracy percentage. So something that's, above 80, 85%, really, really great. Once we start getting into kind of the low 70s, 60s, you may want to be a little bit more cautious and just kind of trade at your own risk there. Now, you could also, too, look based off of our 4 points of confirmation. You can see our short-term crossover, the medium-term crossover. We've got our neural index trend, of course, our differences, and there are some other indicators out this way, but we're really looking at those 4 points of confirmation. Do we have a crossover, a neural index, and the predictive differences along with that predictive trading range as well? So a great way to identify opportunities without having to do all that legwork. Let the software do the heavy lifting for you, and you go through and cherry pick the best of those opportunities using the filters. So pretty incredible stuff. All right. You're welcome, Gail. I'm so glad that was helpful. Always like to provide as much education in these sessions as possible, whether it is, related to earnings or maybe you guys just have a question. So what I'm going to do is let's in fact take some additional ticker symbols now. I did see some others that were pulled up previously. So is that LAC? Is that what I see? Let's take a look here. LAC, lithium. All right, Gail, that one's for you. I saw that from earlier and I didn't want to miss out on it. All right, I got MP, we got CRISPR, LAC. I'm just looking back to see if I had any others. Go ahead and just type those in. If you guys want to take a look at some others, it doesn't have to be earnings related. Let's just go ahead and open this this chat up to any additional ticker symbols you guys might want to look at from just an AI standpoint. What is the artificial intelligence telling us about the current trend and what to expect moving forward? So Lithium Americas. All right. This is such a great example. Thank you, Gail, for bringing this up. And do me a favor too. I'm going to explain this here in just a moment. I'm going to zoom in, but if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the channel. We've got some additional education coming out that I want to make sure you guys get those reminders for. So go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, please, if you haven't already. That would certainly just help us to make sure we're providing the best content for you as well and get your feedback. So that would be very much so appreciated if you could do that. Now, here is a great example of what types of scenarios to avoid too, right? So I'm actually, I zoomed in prematurely, so I should not have. So I'm going to zoom back out. We'll circle back to the zoom in. All right, I got you guys. Perfect. NVIDIA, UNH. Okay, gotcha. Thank you guys for those ticker symbols, by the way. So how do you avoid bad or marginal trade? Has anyone ever gotten into a trade and it's just gone nowhere? I mean, I'm sure everybody will raise their hand, right? Because it happens. So how do you avoid that? And that's where these predictive indicators are incredibly powerful, because you can see the strength down here. And in fact, I'm just gonna pull this up a little bit so you guys can see this even better. And we'll minimize our IntelliScan. But you can see there is almost no strength coming into this trend expectation through this trend. And this is just kind of money sitting in the market, sitting at risk and going nowhere, right? We need movement in the market, unless you like to trade a delta neutral strategy, and that's a little bit different setup. But you can also find those types of opportunities in VantagePoint as well. So really just, things for every type of trader. But if you notice your predictive differences down here at the bottom, and Vic, this also goes to your question as well. How can you navigate through some of those scenarios? look to your strength indicators. These are kind of like the precursors to momentum as well. Going to look at the strength of the trend. And so when we're looking at the strength of the trend, if we've got something that's just not going anywhere and sitting sideways, then the likelihood of movement within that asset, profitable movement, is probably very unlikely. And so where do we start to see things really moving is in fact, we start to see it back here. But if you want real, full confirmation, we've got plenty of movement as we start to jump into this trend right here. So you can see we do have a little bit of upward movement from all three of those, more so than we saw over the past couple of months. But as we progress through, we can see we do have that bullish crossover, green neural index, predictive differences coming up. But you may want to wait until you get further confirmation. Instead of just a bump up, is this truly a signal of bullish expectation? How do we know this isn't just a spike or an outlier, right? It's going to pull back against you right away. Well, here's your confirmation with those strength indications, the neural index and the crossover sloping up really steeply at this point as well. So good confirmation there for a potential entry. And we can see this is why the predictive power is so just incredible, because it helps you to navigate through that situation as well. Blue line stays over the black, keeps on coming up until we get that crossover to the downside with all three predictive differences coming down as well. So then of course, coming into that earnings here, we can see we've got earnings coming up, negative estimate here. And if you're starting to sense a theme here where we've got a negative estimate and there's sort of this implied volatility crush that's starting to happen, that's pretty typical. But VantagePoint is going to identify that way in advance. And so you don't have to just simply rely on some fundamentals that are going to happen in November all the way back at kind of mid to beginning October, right? So we can really see when is this going to start taking effect or start impacting that price action. And that's where your predictive crossovers, those 4 points of confirmation, are going to be key. All right, so we can see that happening here. Earnings, negative 0.05%. Earnings is on November 4th, probably during market hours. That's the NA there. And then, of course, we've got earnings accuracy at 69%. So we would look to the neural index that day prior just to make sure that we have a good confident reading on that neural index and the expectation of what price is likely to do. Because keep in mind, that's exactly what that neural index is telling you, is what do we expect price to do over the next 2 days, go up or go down. So if you have that reading confirmed those 2 days out, you can have a lot more confidence, especially if we've got a high AI index reading right there. All right. Perfect. All right. Let's see. So I'm just going to jump on up. We had a couple of others here. Oh, we've got time. Yeah, we can jump into these. All right. I saw NVIDIA, it's NVIDIA, Palantir. Those are kind of the new Teslas. I should just always have those pulled up. All right. So jumping into NVIDIA, let me just circle back through on the chat here. I see some, where is it? UNH, that was the other one. I'm sorry, I had a short-term memory moment there for just a quick sec. So let's see, UNH, IWM. Someone trading the Russell? You got it. All right. Super. All right. I don't think I missed it. Any other ones? If I did, please type it in for me, okay? Just retype it. That'll just help me. So I tried to not miss any, but I'm human. Unfortunately, I'm not artificial intelligence. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? I probably would make a lot more sound decisions, but let the AI guide you. That's what you need to do. All right. So if we take a look at NVIDIA, was there any specific question on NVIDIA? We don't have earnings coming up within the next 7 days. That otherwise our earnings flag would be showing up in the bottom of the screen. You could, in fact, also, add these assets to the IntelliScan and just look to see when earnings is coming up as well. So that's always another way to utilize the IntelliScan to your advantage as well. Let's see. AVAV. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, that should probably take us through. So I don't know what the question was on NVIDIA. I just saw the ticker symbol, so we'll just walk through since we don't have earnings coming up within the next 7 days. So when did we get a crossover back to the upside on NVIDIA? Now, guys, take a look. If we if we look back at NVIDIA's trend, I'm just gonna back this up. All right, and I will even jump on over to that triple cross for you guys so you can see. Where we saw this at green, all right, there were plenty of those reversion trades or buy the dip type scenarios on NVIDIA. But you can see that that triple cross just stays green this entire time, allowing you to really just confidently move through that trend and manage that position. We got into some sideways movement here. We can see that triple cross turned yellow on into red, right, before jumping back up into a green trend. Here, taking advantage of a little shorter term movement. It turns back yellow right around here. You can see that shading switching, and of course jumping back into our shorter term crossovers, helping you to navigate through that trend as well. The medium term crossover stays green. We do have some areas where it does pull back, right, Vic? That's what we saw earlier. But again, navigating using both types of crossovers. That's well-rounded analysis. We're looking at a shorter term movement along with longer term trend extension. We've got price action. We've got momentum with the predictive differences. And of course, price action the next day with that predictive trade candle as well, to really give you a bigger picture look of what's expected to happen rather than just trying to guess and hope. Hope definitely not a strategy. So zooming back on in. Nope, that was really close. Okay, well, that's all right. You guys can see it nice and clear here. Expectation on NVIDIA jumping back into bullish expectation back here on 1024. We had confirmation, and then yes, we did have confirmation on that predictive trade candle as well. So nice confirmation all across the board. Nothing ever expecting a reversal to the bearish side here, just continuing on in through that trend. Now, when you have a gap like that, you do sort of want to be cautious. You might want to protect your profits, if you will. Maybe you're taking a small portion of profit. Maybe you're putting in tighter stops. There's lots of things that you can do to manage the position as well. So, you want to make sure that you're managing your capital also. So make sure you're, setting those stops, taking profit, or setting profit targets rather, and just making sure overall that you are assessing from that well-rounded standpoint. Now, this is sort of gap analysis. All right, guys. So, you can see that we did have a gap between the 28th and the 29th. That is always a little bit riskier scenario because there is a probability or a possibility, I should say, of price coming back to sort of refill that gap. I believe we came back to refill that gap and ended about 202.81. So there you have it. Price will tend to pull back sometimes. Does that mean that we're out of a bullish trend? No, right? We actually still, over the next 2 days, we still had bullish price movement. We didn't drop all the way down to 191, right? We still stayed far above that level. So still in that bullish trend expectation here. We'll see what the software does tonight when it updates. If we're expecting to see that bullish trend continue, or are we going to be reverting back to a mean or a potential buy point as well. But using the predictive forecast in the way that we've done today can really help guide you through those different types of scenarios. So hopefully that was helpful on NVIDIA. So let's just move on to UNH. Again, if you guys have specific questions about these markets that we're reviewing, go ahead and type those in, please. All right, that will definitely be helpful. Michael, I'll get to it if I can, but I want to make sure we only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure I get to these others also. UNH, any specific questions here? All right, just going to jump into analysis. All right, so do we have, I am my eyes are so attuned to the VantagePoint software. And the more that you utilize the software, the more fluent you become in it. So your eyes are just automatically drawn to sort of different type scenarios. So we can see there's very little movement happening on the strength indications here. If anything, they might be bearish, again, with the bearish neural index. And we've had really very little price movement happening here over the last couple of days. We did have earnings, right? So we were expecting before the open, it was a positive earnings announcement. So let me just clear some of this off. Let's see, before the open on October 28th, and that's the day that we are on. So we can see we actually did have a bump in price action from one day to the next bullish here. So was the neural index accurate? Yeah, absolutely. Did we hit a new high? Certainly did, right? So yeah, that's a primo example of the earnings indicator and that earnings AI index, utilizing that neural index, a great example of that. Now, keep in mind, I outlined a few timelines earlier, that 21 days prior to earnings, the 7 days prior to earnings, but also too, I would be remiss if I did not mention this. So understand that after earnings, there is sort of a grace period that you need to allow for that asset to really just even out. All right. Let the chaos from earnings, the volatility from earnings settle down for that trend to sort of find its way again. All right. So again, that's typically a 3-day time period after earnings to allow that grace period for the trend to settle. Because, again, earnings have fundamental impacts. And so you want to allow some time for that chaos to settle. So again, just keep that in mind. I wanted to make sure everybody had at least that takeaway as well for today. So UNH, of course, looking right here, we can see not a whole lot of movement, if anything, bearish expectation. We in fact already had a bearish crossover to the downside, and those predictive differences coming in. So if you were in this just kind of holding sideways, you may have gotten out already, back here when we were expecting that bearish expectation with the confirmation from the predictive differences. Nothing here told us to jump back in bullish because of the predictive differences. You can see at no time were all three of these moving up together at the same time again after this move to the downside. So again, this is where avoiding sort of those marginal trades is really, really important. So you're not tying up trade capital with something that's not moving. Unless you, again, like those types of opportunities, which can be great for options traders, right? So let's jump back on over to IWM. So when we take a look at the IWM, this is an ETF, so this is going to be the ETF that follows the Russell 2000. We were expecting some bearishness today on the Russell. You can see we had that fresh bearish crossover. Also even switch over to the short term. We saw that happen simultaneously along with the medium term. So the 1 and 2 day trend predictions, we're expecting that bearish movement. We've got confirmation here with our neural index going down and the predictive differences going down as well. So definitely a higher risk at staying in that bullish position, looking at potentially more of a bearish movement there. Decide what you would do from a trader. What type of strategy works best? Are you exiting out? Do you only trade bullish? Do you like a shorting opportunity? There's plenty of different things to different ways to trade that, right? And utilize the predictive data. Are you looking for a reversion back to the mean type scenario as well? So let's look at AVAV really quickly. We got 1 more minute, right? So, AVAV had a really nice trend here. I don't know who typed that in. I'm sorry, but thank you again for these great ticker symbols that you guys wanted to review today. So we had a confirmation of our bullish expectation. Now, here's earnings, right? So we had earnings, all right? And that was 89% accurate on the AI earnings index, right? For price action on the day of impact, the day that earnings would impact that asset. So that happened on 9/9. So if we take a look 3 days later, right, we can also see that we do have that bullish crossover along with our 4 points of confirmation here. So I'm just waiting on my pen. It wants to take a minute. So we've got our bullish confirmation, crossover, bullish neural index, and the 3 predictive differences coming up. Earnings chaos has died down. We've given it its grace period. It's now, again, expected to resume its normal trend activity. And in this case, normal trend activity identified by VantagePoint would be a bullish expectation. Really nice move to the upside here until we get that selling or profit taking opportunity here with our 4 points of confirmation to the downside, and then again back here. Now take a look, because we don't really have our predictive differences all confirming at the same time, so you may want to have been very careful about that. Again, kind of picking the best of the best opportunities is really important, because there are plenty of other opportunities. We can see a vast difference between these predictive differences, the way that this looks here, where we've got some going up, some going down, right? And then we've got full confirmation back here of that movement to the upside. So again, being able to cherry pick the best opportunities for yourself as a trader is vital to having confidence in that position. And so VantagePoint, of course, can help you do that. So it was so great to have you guys in here today. I'm glad we got a chance to go over not just earnings, but also just how to identify different types of opportunities using the trends as well. So on Tuesday, we're going to be taking a look at sort of dip scenarios and how to identify those reversion type trades. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody back here on Tuesday, and I hope everyone got something incredibly useful and valuable out of this session, and that is always knowledge. So we'll be back providing additional education and knowledge for you again, but I certainly hope everybody has a great rest of your week and stay safe over the weekend. See you guys on the next one.